You brought cupcakes to a boundary conversation, Evelyn told her daughter-in-law, voice calm as a signed affidavit. Tessa blinked, still smiling, still certain charm would win. I finalized the trust this morning, Evelyn added, setting the notarized envelope on the table. Daughter-in-law, co-resident, now former beneficiary. The estate no longer had room for erasure. This time the mother-in-law held the keys. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The garage smelled faintly of pine sol and dust, the kind of clean that only masks what's beneath. Evelyn stood quietly beside a folding table layered in creased plastic and scattered with napkins still warm from the dryer. Her heels tapped softly against the concrete as she set down her wrapped cardigan and adjusted the pearl clasp on her bag. She'd dressed thoughtfully. Steel blue silk blouse, pressed black slacks, and the antique locket Nathan had given her for her 60th. "Mom!" Nathan's voice cut through the laughter spilling from the main house. He leaned out from the French doors, smiling in that easy, distracted way she recognized from his teenage years. "You made it! Everything okay finding the place?" Evelyn smiled warmly. "Of course. I helped design the driveway, remember?" He laughed distractedly and glanced over his shoulder. "Right. Hey, Tessa could use a hand with the napkins, I think. Downstairs set up, just for overflow guests." Before she could respond, Tessa appeared behind him. Blonde waves styled perfectly, champagne in one hand, her designer jumpsuit in a shade Evelyn couldn't name, but knew cost more than anything she'd worn in a year. "Hi, Evelyn." Tessa's smile was taut, controlled. "Would you mind helping lay out the napkins in the garage? It's just a bit tight upstairs, and you know how humid it's gotten." She didn't wait for an answer. A hand lightly touched Evelyn's elbow, guiding her toward the side door like a polite usher at a wake. The garage had been hastily swept and strung with party store lanterns, their light flickering unevenly. A metal fan hummed in the corner, pushing warm air across a folding buffet table holding half-covered fruit trays and a plastic jug of punch. Evelyn took a slow breath and set to arranging the napkins into fans. Old habit from holiday parties she'd hosted herself, back when her husband was alive, before the property lines blurred and titles changed. Music floated down from the open stairwell, live jazz, polished and expensive. Laughter echoed from the kitchen and parlor upstairs, layered with the clink of real glassware. Evelyn tilted her head up, listening. Footsteps on the stairs. A young server in black came down balancing a tray of champagne flutes, pausing awkwardly when he spotted Evelyn alone. "Oh, I'm so sorry," he stammered. "These are for the living room guests." He glanced at his tray, then reached behind him, lifting a styrofoam cup from a side cart. "There's juice for, the other guests." Evelyn accepted the cup without expression. Store-brand cranberry, thin and overly sweet. A slight crack ran down one side of the plastic. She sipped it anyway. Around her, the garage slowly filled. 3 teenagers hovered near the back wall, scrolling through their phones. An elderly aunt she vaguely recognized from Nathan's wedding took a seat in a metal folding chair, her dress bunched awkwardly beneath her. Someone dropped a fork. It clattered across the concrete like a cymbal, drawing no notice from the music upstairs. "Is it okay if I go say hello to some folks upstairs?" Evelyn asked Tessa as she passed again with a tray of sparkling waters. Tessa didn't stop walking. "It's just really packed up there. We want everyone to have space to breathe, you know?" Her tone was breezy, but Evelyn caught the flicker of annoyance in her eyes. "You can see everything from here." Evelyn smiled and nodded, as though being treated like a ghost in her own house was just a logistical hiccup. She waited until Tessa disappeared around the corner. Then, slowly, Evelyn pulled her phone from her purse and tapped open her documents folder. Her thumb hovered, then scrolled. The screen illuminated the quiet, her face lined with quiet control. Oakwood Property Living Trust Clause 7. Revocable at discretion of grantor. She read it twice. Once for the legal meaning, once for herself. Above, the band started a new number, something slow and brassy, full of confidence. She took another sip of juice and looked around the garage, memorizing the way the lights flickered like dying stars. Next time they served champagne, someone else would be in the garage. By morning, the guest house was quiet, except for the soft ticking of Evelyn's kitchen clock and the occasional creak from the ceiling fan above. She sat at the breakfast table in her robe, fingers curled around a chipped ceramic mug, one of the few things she'd brought with her when she downsized, into this space that was never meant to be hers for good. The house up the hill still buzzed faintly with last night's music in her ears, but Evelyn's thoughts were sharper now, focused. She picked up her phone, intending to check the weather, but paused at the sight of notifications crowding her lock screen. Tags, mentions, a comment thread climbing by the second. She clicked the first link. There they were, faces lit with laughter, glasses raised mid-toast in the sun-drenched parlor, Tessa front and center, flanked by her family. Nathan relaxed, arms slung around her shoulder. The caption, "A day to remember with the people who matter most. Graduation, glow up, Chaksh family circle." Evelyn's eyes scanned the frame. She remembered standing just off camera when the photo was taken. Tray in hand, straightening chairs in the garage, napkins folded neatly like fan blades. She wasn't in this shot. She wasn't in any of them. Swipe. Tessa's mother, beaming as she held the cake knife. Tessa's sister giving a champagne toast with a dramatic hand in the air. Another carousel of photos, close-ups of the catering spread, golden chafing dishes gleaming under rented lights. "Thank you at Marigold Catering for making it beautiful and delicious," the caption read. Evelyn felt a pulse behind her eyes. No mention of the deposit, no mention of the person who had fronted the full amount with a quiet, "Consider it our gift." She'd paid early, paid fully. Tessa had smiled and said, "That would be amazing, Evelyn, truly." Like she was doing Evelyn a favor by accepting generosity. Evelyn opened her drawer and pulled out a slim file folder, cream-colored with a handwritten label, "Event, Tessa/Nathan." She placed it on the table, flipped it open, and laid the papers out like cards in a solitaire game. Check number 2734 to Marigold Catering, $3,250 memo line. Tessa's graduation, May 17th, full buffet option. Email thread confirming menu selections, her name on every reply receipt for the patio tent rental which she'd booked herself. Even the digital tip receipt, 22% on a $3,600 total. The weight of it wasn't the money, it was the erasure. When Nathan stopped by later to return a Tupperware she hadn't sent, she asked about it gently, like someone scratching at the corner of a painting they weren't sure was crooked. "I saw the photos," she said, watching him stir the coffee she'd made for him like it was habit, like it was still his house. "Lovely shots, though I think I was behind the camera the whole time." He chuckled. "Oh, come on, Mom, you know how chaotic those things are. Everyone was buzzing around." "I noticed there was no mention of the catering gift. I hope it helped ease the stress a bit." Nathan leaned back, waved a hand. "You're overthinking it. Tessa was just trying to keep things focused on the event. You know how she is with aesthetics and all." He looked down, chuckled again. "Don't take it personally." Evelyn smiled tightly and nodded, as if his words were enough, as if brushing off a $4,000 contribution was just one of those charming little quirks of modern motherhood. When he left, she returned to the kitchen. She scanned each document and saved it digitally, uploading to a locked folder titled Oakwood, Financials. Then she opened her email again. Calm, unhurried. The same calm she used to use while sewing buttons on Nathan's shirts during his clerkship interviews. To Linda Kerrigan. Subject, Trust Amendment Inquiry. Hi Linda, I'd like to revisit the Oakwood trust structure. There's been a shift in family dynamics I'd like to address while it's fresh. Please let me know when you're available for a consultation. Best, Evelyn Carter. She hit send. The cursor blinked once, then silence. Outside, the wind lifted a napkin off the patio table above and sent it cartwheeling down toward the guest house. Evelyn didn't move to catch it. Evelyn peeled the plastic wrap off a leftover fruit tray, her fingernail catching on the edge. The pineapple had turned translucent. The grapes were starting to shrivel. The silence in the garage felt heavier now, like it remembered everything too. She wiped a sticky ring of punch from one of the folding chairs, pressing harder than necessary. It was early, just past 7. Tessa and Nathan were still asleep in the main house, most likely curled up in the bedroom Evelyn used to dust twice a week without being asked. The garage lights buzzed overhead, a soft electric hum that broke only when the old metal fan kicked on in the corner. She glanced at the calendar hanging on the side of the mini-fridge. May 18th, one day after the party, one day after her erasure became final. She set the punch-soaked paper towel aside and lowered herself into one of the chairs with a quiet sigh. Her joints clicked in the morning chill. And just like that, the rewind began. It had been nearly 10 years since she'd moved into this guest house. A generous, temporary solution, they all said. Tessa had just started Medica school. Nathan had been managing student debt and a new mortgage. Evelyn, newly widowed and freshly retired, had offered the house, her house, as a gift to build their future. "I'll just take the guest quarters," she'd said. "You two need space to grow." Nathan had hugged her so tight she couldn't breathe. "You always know the right thing to do, Mom." It was supposed to be a gesture of love. Evelyn had worked through the estate lawyer, transferring 60% of the Oakwood property into Nathan and Tessa's name. A strategic decision, she was told. It would prevent certain taxes. Create shared equity. Family first, always. Now, as she sat among the half-deflated balloons and crumpled paper napkins, Evelyn wondered how much of that gesture had actually been love, and how much had been quiet desperation to stay close. She rose and opened the side cabinet where she kept her old manila folders. Inside was her original notarized copy of the deed transfer. She ran her finger along the signature line. Evelyn Carter Granter, 2015 next to it, scrawled in youthful blue ink. Nathan Carter and Tessa Carter, joint tenants in common. A small note had been added in legalese below the signature block. Trust conditions revocable at grantor's discretion. She remembered the day they signed. Nathan brought cupcakes. Tessa had been polite, efficient. "We'll make this place shine," she'd said, eyes scanning the vintage fixtures Evelyn had refinished by hand. For a while, it was all right. Shared dinners, movie nights, laughter in the garden. Then Tessa started converting Evelyn's rose garden into a gravel meditation path. "Too high maintenance," she'd said. Evelyn's bathroom was painted over without a word. Her china was packed into a storage bin and replaced with minimalist dishes from Crate and Barrel. Then came the locks. New codes. "Oh, it's just for safety," Nathan had explained. "You still have your guest house, Mom." Bit by bit, inch by inch, she became an accessory to her own legacy. A sharp laugh drifted through the cracked window above her head. Tessa's voice, unmistakable. She was on a call. Evelyn tilted her head to listen. "Yeah, no, we're thrilled. I mean, it's our estate now, really. Took a decade, but we finally made it ours." Evelyn froze. Not home, not shared property, not the house we built together. Our estate. Ours. She took 2 steps back from the window and sat down again, her heartbeat ticking louder than the garage lights. On the folding table beside her was a linen napkin from the night before, still folded neatly the way she used to do for Thanksgiving. She picked it up and slowly unraveled the corners. It left a faint wine-colored stain on her palm, from punch or memory, she couldn't say. She wiped it off and reached for her phone. 1 document, 1 note, then a folder labeled Legal Amendments. She opened it. There was work to do. The next morning, Evelyn woke before sunrise, uneasy and still. A weight pressed into her chest that no sleep could smooth. The words she'd overheard yesterday clung to her like the damp air in the garage. Our estate, 100% ours. She didn't cry. She didn't even flinch. But something internal shifted, like a picture frame slightly tilting on a nail, no longer level. She made tea slowly, the way she had for 40 years. Earl Grey, splash of almond milk. While it steeped, she opened her laptop, lit only by the dim under-cabinet lights. A habit she'd kept from her days balancing the household finances when her late husband handled investments and left the rest to her. She still paid bills on time. She still tracked every line item like she was prepping for an audit no one else saw coming. The guest house Wi-Fi pinged back sluggishly, but she waited patiently as her banking app loaded. Then she saw it. $984.52 debited from the house card, marked as Rosethorn Cellars, Private Reserve Wine Club, quarterly shipment. Her brow furrowed. She clicked again. Another charge. $168.75. Harvest Market, luxury cheese and charcuterie bundle. A memory bloomed last Thanksgiving. Tessa complaining that the wine served with dinner wasn't properly aged. Nathan laughing, "We'll start curating next year, Mom, like real adults." Apparently, they had. With Evelyn's money. She scrolled further. The card on file? One of her older accounts, a Visa originally used for shared household expenses, forgotten by them, maintained by her. Quietly, she picked up her phone and called the bank. "Yes," she said calmly to the rep. "I need to deactivate this card, immediately. No replacement needed." A pause. "Yes, I understand that will cancel any recurring charges." She ended the call, set the phone down, and stared out the kitchen window at the ivy crawling up the side of the main house. It had grown thicker over the years, almost strangling the wooden trellis she'd planted herself. Back at her desk, she opened her accounts and began updating her profile. Every bill still attached to her name, gas, water, HOA dues, was removed or rerouted. The main house now operated on a card that no longer existed. Let them feel it. The kettle clicked off, the tea gone cold. Later that day, Evelyn took a walk around the property. The gravel path Tessa insisted on adding crunched beneath her loafers. 2 Amazon boxes sat on the porch of the main house, one marked crystal stemware, set of 8, the other French oak wine rack, no assembly required. She didn't touch them, she didn't need to. That night she reread the trust amendment draft from Linda. It wasn't final yet, but just seeing the updated language soothed something deep. Primary property control remains with grantor. All discretionary funding decisions revert to sole authority of grantor, effective upon signature. The pen rested beside the folder. She didn't sign it yet, not out of hesitation, just timing. When her phone buzzed the next afternoon, she recognized Nathan's name, but didn't answer. Then a second buzz, this one from her text preview. "Tessa, why are the grocery payments declining? Did something change with the card?" Evelyn stared at the message a long moment. She set the phone down without replying. Instead, she walked to the kitchen cabinet and pulled out the old French press they hadn't touched since Tessa's fancy espresso machine arrived. She rinsed it clean, spooned in the grounds, and filled it slowly, letting the scent of brewing coffee fill the space. For the first time in weeks, the guest house felt like hers again. She took a sip, stared at her silent phone, and whispered to herself, "Not everything tastes better aged." The glossy magazine slipped through the mail slot with a soft thump onto Evelyn's doormat. She hadn't subscribed to Midland Living, but she recognized it, a local quarterly for suburban homemakers who treated their homes like art galleries and brunch stages. It was the kind of magazine that featured women who hosted sip-and-see showers and had thoughts on window treatments as identity. She almost tossed it straight into the recycling bin. Almost, but something, instinct maybe, made her flip it open. Halfway through, the headline caught her mid-sip of tea, "Healing Through Home, Tessa Carter's Journey from Med School Stress to Design Serenity." Evelyn stared. There was Tessa, beaming beside the parlor fireplace Evelyn had restored with her own hands 15 years ago, before Nathan proposed, before Tessa even existed in their lives. Her arm draped over the back of the antique settee Evelyn's mother had gifted her for her wedding. A 2-page spread followed. Wide-angle shots of the living room, kitchen, even the backyard Evelyn once gardened every Sunday. The article praised Tessa's eye for transitional style and command of spatial storytelling. But what truly sent Evelyn cold wasn't the praise. It was the sentence near the top. "Tessa Carter, homeowner and design lead, walks us through her sanctuary at Oakwood Estate." No mention of Evelyn, no mention of joint ownership, no context. Just Tessa, as if the house had materialized fully under her vision and her name. Evelyn's fingers tightened around the page. The faint smell of printer ink and perfume sample inserts mixed uneasily in her nose. She sat down in the quiet of the guest house and opened her laptop. Her breath came slowly, precisely, like she was preparing for a deposition. First, she visited the county assessor's website. She typed in the parcel number from her trust documents and opened the current property title. Sure enough, the legal designation still read, Joint Tenancy in Common, 60% Carter N and Carter T, 40% Carter E. She clicked Export PDF. Then she opened her folder from Linda Kerrigan. The amended trust language was already in motion, but Evelyn had held off on finalizing one key detail: revoking shared beneficiary interest. Now, that hesitation vanished. She opened a new message to Linda, her fingers still, her face unreadable. Subject: Immediate action. Title revocation request. Linda, please proceed with formal revocation of shared beneficiary status under Clause 7.2 of the Oakwood Trust. I've reviewed the updated draft. No further delay necessary. Also, please initiate a title review and reinstatement of full grantor control per our earlier conversations. Let me know when the certified letters are ready for dispatch. Regards, Evelyn Carter. She read it twice, then hit send. Down the hill, she could hear faint laughter. Tessa's voice again. Maybe still talking about the article. Maybe reading it aloud to someone who didn't know better. Evelyn opened the magazine one more time. In the corner of the kitchen photo, barely visible, was the antique pie safe she'd refinished after her husband died. Tessa had once called it a bit too rustic and tried to replace it with open shelving. She hadn't succeeded. Some things had roots too deep to pull clean. By the following Tuesday, Linda had replied with a scan of the envelope and the formal notification language. Everything's neat, direct, and enclosed in legal trim. Evelyn printed the cover letter for her own records. Subject: Reinstatement of property control. Primary trust holder notification. Dear Mrs. Tessa Carter, this letter serves as formal notification that Evelyn Carter, as grantor and primary trust holder, has exercised her full discretionary right under Clause 7.2 of the Oakwood Trust to revoke and rescind shared beneficiary privileges and financial authority associated with said property, effective immediately. She placed the hard copy in a manila folder marked Executed May 25th. That afternoon, she watched calmly from her window as the mail carrier walked up the stone path and slid a certified letter into the brass mailbox affixed to the main house. A breeze rattled the wind chimes Evelyn had installed years ago. For the first time in months, their sound didn't bother her. A few moments later, a shadow passed through the living room window. A figure, Tessa, stepped forward, holding the envelope in one hand. She read the front. Her other hand went to her phone. Tessa didn't knock. She stormed in. Evelyn watched her silhouette pause in the guesthouse doorway, backlit by the afternoon glare and pulsing with indignation. "You sent a certified letter?" Tessa demanded, waving the still unopened envelope like it was radioactive. Evelyn looked up from her desk without flinching. "It required confirmation. That's what certified means." Tessa's laugh was short and tight. "You blindsided us." Evelyn calmly folded the file she'd been reviewing and stood. "You've made several changes around here without notice. Consider this a form of alignment." Tessa blinked, momentarily thrown by the composure. "You're revoking the trust interest?" "Nathan and I are. This is our home." "Funny," Evelyn said, her voice low but precise. "You told the magazine it was your estate. You left out my name and my 40% stake." Tessa's mouth opened, then closed. She stared like she hadn't thought Evelyn was capable of biting back, let alone planning a legal ambush. "Where's Nathan?" Evelyn asked coolly. Tessa's arms crossed. "At work, and he doesn't need this stress." "I imagine not," Evelyn said, "especially since he probably thinks he's still protected by the original trust. That changed this morning?" Tessa said nothing, but her fingers curled tighter around the envelope. "I'll give you space," Evelyn added, gesturing toward the door. "Seems you need time to read." Tessa turned without a word and left, her sandals snapping against the flagstone path as she marched back uphill. The moment the door closed, Evelyn exhaled, not in relief, but in confirmation. She crossed the room, opened her armoire, and retrieved the same leather-bound organizer she'd taken from her safe the week prior. Inside, cushioned in velvet, were original deeds, a master key, and a single flash drive containing every receipt she'd kept for household improvements, down to the last replaced gutter. But she wasn't done. That afternoon, she walked back to the main house under the guise of checking the attic for archival boxes. Nathan had texted her the garage door code earlier, probably trying to smooth things over. The moment she stepped inside, the house no longer smelled like hers. Synthetic lemon, eucalyptus diffusers, and undertones of vanilla-scented furniture polish lingered like over-applied perfume. She walked past the foyer, past the grand mirror, into the hallway that used to lead to her room. But her room no longer existed. Where the bed had once stood, a Peloton faced the window like a throne. A Lululemon-branded yoga mat was rolled beside a mirrored wall. Gone were the lace curtains, the keepsake bookshelf, the quiet dignity of oak. In its place, chrome, harsh light, and curated self-optimization. Evelyn took a step back, nearly tripping over a pair of foam yoga blocks. Along the wall, 3 plastic bins sat half-lidded, each marked in black Sharpie. Donate. Toss. Unsure. She crouched beside the donate bin, her hand trembling slightly now, and peeled back layers. She found framed photos of Nathan as a toddler, faces she'd kissed goodnight 1,000 times. A crystal vase from her 25th anniversary stuffed sideways like trash, and beneath them all, a velvet ring box. She opened it. Empty. Her chest tightened. This box had held her mother's ring, an antique sapphire set in a gold band worn thin with love and time. She searched the other bins. Nothing. She stood, eyes sweeping the room until she spotted a smaller donation pile on a nearby table. A dusty cosmetics bag, a jar of old buttons, and inside a Ziploc bag, zipped without care, was the ring. Like it meant nothing. She picked it up, fingers trembling, and held it to the light. The sapphire was dull, but intact. A survivor. Downstairs, a cabinet door slammed shut. Probably Tessa, banging through drawers, still stewing. Evelyn clutched the bag and walked calmly toward the front door. She didn't slam it. She didn't raise her voice. She just whispered into the empty foyer, "You declutter what you don't understand." Then she turned and walked back to the guest house, where her own design, quiet, deliberate, enduring, waited to receive the ring. The ring lay in the center of Evelyn's desk, cleaned, polished, and catching a thin ribbon of amber light from the guest house window. She hadn't worn it since her mother's funeral. Now it seemed to stare back at her, daring her to finish what she'd started. She turned it once, then slipped it on her right hand. A perfect fit. No need to force it. Some things were still hers, no matter how deeply buried. She opened the side drawer, pulled out the final version of the trust amendment from Linda, and laid it flat on the desk. The margins were crisp, the signatures blank. The ink pen beside her felt heavier than its weight. Then, deliberately, Evelyn signed her name. Once, in blue ink. Twice, for the notarized copy. Just as she'd raised Nathan, carefully, lovingly, but with boundaries she had let blur far too long, now she reclaimed what she had quietly relinquished. By 6 o'clock, the guest house was set. The dining table, covered in ivory linen, seated 3. Crystal stemware from her original wedding registry, she'd rescued it from a storage box last week, glimmered under the soft glow of antique sconces. Lavender shortbread sat on a porcelain tray, and a bottle of chilled Prosecco rested in a silver ice bucket. She heard the car tires on gravel before she saw them. Her niece, Rachel, 35, sharp and kind, stepped out first, carrying a box of bakery fresh tarts and wearing a navy trench she likely thrifted. Behind her was Serena, a longtime friend and estate lawyer Evelyn had once mentored through a divorce nobody saw coming. "You weren't kidding about needing a toast," Serena said as they stepped inside. "I wasn't," Evelyn replied, "and I think you'll appreciate the reason." They settled at the table, laughter rising quickly. Rachel recounted a disastrous date with a professor who talked only in movie quotes. Serena rolled her eyes, chimed in with courtroom absurdities. Evelyn listened, smiling, not politely but fully, as though air had finally returned to the room. Then she raised her glass. "To chosen family," she said, pausing. "And clear lines." Serena arched an eyebrow. You finalized it? Evelyn nodded. This afternoon. Trust amendments are done. Guest house is now mine in full title. No shared obligations, no shared names. Rachel let out a soft, damn, and clinked her glass to Evelyn's. About time? I agree, Evelyn said. She lifted her napkin, dabbed the corner of her mouth, then leaned forward. And I've scheduled a filing with the county clerk for Monday. The entire property now falls under my full authority. Serena set down her drink. You're not just tightening the reins, you're cutting them. Evelyn's tone didn't waver. Tessa donated my mother's ring into a Ziploc bag that silenced the table. Rachel reached for Evelyn's hand across the table. I'm so sorry. No need, Evelyn replied calmly. That moment told me everything I needed to know about permanence. What I value, I protect. What they discard, I collect. Serena exhaled. So what's next? Evelyn stood, walked to her writing desk, and opened a drawer. Inside was a thick ivory envelope, hand-addressed, stamped, and paper-clipped to a checklist titled Notice of Relocation, 30 days, per revised trust compliance. She held it up without drama. Next, she said, is making space? The silence in the room changed shape, less heavy, more resolved. Rachel leaned back in her chair. And you'll hand-deliver it? Evelyn smiled faintly. Number I've already arranged for a process server. I thought it might carry more clarity. The ice bucket hissed as a drop of water trickled down its side. Outside, the wind swept across the gravel, rustling the leaves against the deck columns. Serena lifted her glass again. To clarity, she said. They all drank. When the evening ended, Evelyn returned to her desk alone. She removed the relocation notice from the envelope, double-checked the wording, and slid it into a fresh envelope addressed to Mr. Nathan Carter and Mrs. Tessa Carter, Oakwood Estate, North Wing. The envelope felt heavier than paper should. Evelyn balanced it in her palm as she stepped out of the guest house and onto the gravel path. Late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the estate, hers again in full legal clarity. The breeze was mild, rustling the ivy along the brick columns, but Evelyn's steps were unwavering. At the top of the hill, the main house looked peaceful, impressive even, the kind of home people stopped to admire, but she knew better now. It was a showroom with termites behind the drywall, polished, curated, and hollow. She rang the bell. Nathan answered in a Henley and joggers, holding a sports bottle and smiling like they still shared Sunday brunches. Hey, Mom, he said, genuinely surprised. You don't usually come up this time of day. Everything okay? Evelyn tilted her head, offered a warm but unreadable smile. Perfectly. Is Tessa home? Yeah, she's finishing up a call with her residency director. Want to come in? Only for a minute, she said. I just need to deliver this. She held out the envelope, thick, sealed, and labeled in her clean cursive. To Nathan and Tessa Carter, North Wing residents. Nathan accepted it with a furrowed brow, the weight of it catching him off guard. Is this about the trust update? Partly, she said, her voice gentle but firm. It's time for a small adjustment. Before he could ask anything further, Tessa's voice drifted down the stairs. Nathan? Did you grab the new lease paperwork? I think the storage room needs to be reassigned. Evelyn didn't flinch. Her face was calm, calculated. Tessa appeared at the top of the staircase barefoot, phone still in hand, clipboard tucked under her arm. The moment she saw the envelope, her eyes narrowed. What is that? She asked. Nathan opened it. His eyes moved quickly, mouth parting slightly as he read. Then he handed the document to Tessa. She scanned the letter once, then again. Notice of Relocation. 30 days per revised trust terms and reinstated grantor authority. This letter serves as formal notice that occupancy rights to the North Wing will be rescinded effective 30 days from the date of this letter. All possessions must be removed and keys surrendered by that date. Tessa's face drained of color. She wouldn't. Evelyn looked at her evenly. I already did. Tessa's jaw clenched. This isn't legal. You can't just evict family. We have rights. This is our home. Nathan looked between them, confusion giving way to unease. Wait, Mom, you're not serious. This must be a mistake, right? You wouldn't actually. Evelyn took a step forward, not out of aggression but finality. You've called it your estate. You've claimed full ownership. You've rebranded rooms, discarded heirlooms, and published lies in regional magazines. You made it clear I was no longer welcome in your version of this home. Tessa folded her arms. You're doing this out of spite. No, Evelyn said softly. I'm doing this out of correction. Nathan's voice cracked. But we just built the new patio. We were going to host. Evelyn didn't blink. Then I suggest you plan accordingly. The countdown begins today. A long silence followed. The ticking of the hallway clock was suddenly deafening. Tessa's lip curled slightly, but she said nothing more. The clipboard in her hand wobbled, her grip weakening. Nathan glanced down at the notice again. There has to be a conversation here. Mediation? Something. Evelyn nodded. There will be space for discussion after you vacate. She turned and walked back down the steps, her heels steady against the slate stone. At the foot of the hill, the wind had picked up just enough to carry Tessa's barely whispered words back to her. She's bluffing. Evelyn didn't pause. She pulled her phone from her pocket, opened her calendar, and marked the date. 30 days left. Enforcement review. Nathan texted the next morning. Can we please sit down and talk? Tessa's upset. I just want to understand all this. Evelyn replied with a single word. Tomorrow. No time. No place. No emotional disclaimers. By mid-afternoon, she'd chosen the sunroom. She arranged 3 chairs, not at a round table but in a line like a panel hearing. No snacks, no drinks, no peace offerings. The last time she brought them cookies, she'd been thanked with storage bins labeled donate. This time, she brought documents. Tessa and Nathan arrived together, arms crossed in mirrored tension. Tessa wore yoga pants and an oversized sweater. Nathan looked like he hadn't slept. Neither offered a greeting. This feels extreme, Tessa said, not even sitting. A formal notice? Process servers? Do you realize how humiliating that is? I do, Evelyn said, sliding a folder across the table. That's why I sent it. Nathan sat down first. Tessa followed, reluctantly, perching on the edge like a guest in a waiting room. Evelyn opened a second folder. These, she said, are receipts. She began laying them out. The catering deposit for Tessa's graduation, the HVAC replacement Evelyn paid for the previous summer, the title transfer paperwork from 2015, copies of original trust language, signed, amendment drafts, highlighted with finalized clauses. Nathan glanced between them, brows drawing together. I remember this, but I thought we agreed. We didn't agree. You assumed, Evelyn said flatly. Tessa leaned forward. So what? This is revenge? Because of a ring in a bin? Evelyn's voice dropped a register. That ring belonged to my mother. I asked myself what she would have done. The answer was clear. Tessa scoffed. This is insane. You're trying to evict your own son. I'm holding my adult son accountable, Evelyn corrected. There's a difference. Nathan rubbed the back of his neck, visibly unraveling. There's gotta be another way. You don't just throw us out. We're family. Evelyn pulled one last sheet from her file, a printout of the Midland Living article. She circled a sentence in red ink and slid it toward them. Tessa Carter, homeowner and design lead. This, Evelyn said softly, was your declaration. Not mine. Tessa's jaw clenched. It's a lifestyle piece. It's branding. It's erasure, Evelyn countered. You redesigned the house. You rebranded me out of it. Now you're shocked it's being corrected. Nathan stood up. This isn't who you are, Mom. You don't do things like this. Not you. I didn't, she said, standing too. Until I had to. The room was silent for a moment. The only sound came from the wind tickling the windows, the rustle of old ivy shifting along the brick walls outside. Tessa's voice was barely above a whisper. Where are we supposed to go? Evelyn met her gaze. You'll figure it out. Like I did when I moved into the guest house, gave up my bedroom, my keys, my privacy, for your future. Nathan swallowed hard. We just needed time. You had time, she said. 10 years of it. Evelyn reached down, retrieved a manila envelope from her briefcase, and placed it in front of them. It was labeled in handwritten ink, "Move Out Checklist, effective 30 days from notice date." Tessa stared at it like it was toxic. "What happens if we don't?" Nathan asked quietly. Evelyn didn't blink. "Then I enforce the terms through probate and civil filing, but I'd prefer not to. I still believe in grace." She turned, walked to the door, and opened it wide. "This meeting is over. You'll find a copy of the revised property map attached. The North Wing is no longer yours. It's transitional housing, starting today." Nathan looked like he might say something else, but didn't. Tessa folded the envelope tightly in her hands like she meant to rip it, then didn't. They walked out, the weight of 30 days now sinking into their spines. Evelyn stood in the doorway as the wind picked up, carrying their silence down the gravel path. The hall outside the sunroom was quieter than usual. Still, too still. As Evelyn walked through it after the meeting, something struck her, something missing. She paused at the wall near the staircase where her wedding portrait once hung. Gone. In its place, an abstract canvas of white streaks on beige linen. Blank emotion disguised as art. No trace of the portrait remained. No nail, no frame, not even a shadow on the wall where the light used to catch the glass. Evelyn stared for a long, still moment. Her own face, in that photo, had watched over 3 generations. Thanksgiving arrivals, prom night departures, her late husband's eulogy. Now replaced by texture without memory. She didn't touch the canvas. She didn't need to. Instead, she turned and walked straight into the old study, now Tessa's meditation room, and pulled out her phone. By noon the next day, Evelyn sat at her kitchen table in the guest house, sipping dark roast from her World's Best Mom mug while on the phone with the utility company. "Yes," she said calmly. "I need to transfer the water, electric, and gas accounts back to my name. Yes, the full property, both structures. No, they are not listed as leaseholders. I'm the primary trustee. Documentation can be emailed immediately." She paused to listen, eyes fixed on the wind chimes outside her window. "Effective today," she said. "Thank you." An hour later, she logged into the property management portal and updated the access rights to the maintenance requests system. Nathan and Tessa were removed. A notification pinged. 2 users deactivated. Then she opened the security system app. She scrolled to the guest house and main house wing listings. Each was color-coded, green for active access, yellow for limited, red for revoked. With 2 taps, she reset the master code for the main entry and deleted Nathan's profile from the account. Then Tessa's. No more backdoor access, no more early morning Amazon drop-offs with someone else's name on the deed. Before she closed the app, she renamed her profile, Evelyn, owner, admin. By mid-afternoon, a locksmith van pulled into the drive. "Just the North Wing locks," she told the tech, a college-age kid who didn't ask questions. "I'll keep the guest house separate." He nodded, opened his toolkit, and went to work. When he finished, he handed her the new set of keys, sleek, brushed steel, and a fresh security fob. "You're all set," he said. "Anyone else need a copy?" Evelyn smiled faintly. "Number just me." He drove away, leaving only the scent of fresh sawdust and new brass lingering in the doorframe. That evening, she walked the halls of the main house, quiet now, echoing. Her fingers grazed the new locks, the cool metal unfamiliar yet welcome. In the parlor, she spotted another change. Family photo frames had been rearranged. The ones featuring her had been quietly removed. In their place, candids of Nathan and Tessa on the beach, graduation shots, filtered selfies framed in silver. They had already begun rewriting the narrative. She didn't feel anger. She felt release. Back in the guest house, she powered up her laptop, reviewed the finalized utilities confirmations, and checked her security feed. Just a habit now. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nathan. "Nathan, we feel like you're erasing us." Evelyn stared at it. Not for long. Just enough to let the irony land. Then she typed back slowly, deliberately. "Evelyn, you already did." She hit send, locked her phone. And for the first time in years, the silence around her didn't feel empty. It felt earned. The next morning, Evelyn stood inside the garage and let the silence speak. Same folding chairs, same scuffed concrete, same faint stain from the punch that dripped from a cracked plastic cup just 2 months earlier. She hadn't cleaned it. She had left it there like a marker, a line drawn in sugar and disrespect. But the space was hers now, no longer exile, but canvas. She moved with quiet purpose, opening the side window to let in the soft, spring light. The breeze carried the scent of honeysuckle from the arbor out front, mingling with the cedar oil she'd dabbed onto a cotton ball and placed in the corner. No more cheap citronella candles, no more sticky folding tables. This was her reclamation ground. She started with the walls. White primer first, rolled smooth with deliberate strokes, covering decades of grime and memory. She layered it with soft, sea glass blue, her favorite shade, one she hadn't seen in the house since Tessa called it dated. Then she unpacked the boxes she had rescued before Tessa could donate them. Out came framed photos, her husband in uniform, Nathan in his Halloween cowboy boots, Evelyn laughing in a sun hat at age 30, holding a sketchbook and lemonade. She placed them above the new workbench, oak, not plywood, where skeins of embroidery thread now lived in color-coded drawers. Her silver thimble sat neatly beside a vintage wooden hoop, its brass clasp gleaming in the sun. Rachel arrived just after noon, 2 iced coffees in hand. "Holy transformation," she said, stepping into the space. "You're 2 throw pillows away from becoming a Pinterest board." Evelyn laughed, genuine and soft. "I figured if I was going to be put in the garage, I might as well hang a sign that says studio and make it official." Rachel walked over to the wall where Evelyn had hung her first finished piece, a linen panel embroidered with a single phrase, "Grace isn't silence." Rachel tilted her head. "You made this recently?" "This morning," Evelyn replied. "I've been thinking in thread lately. Safer than saying everything out loud." They sat side by side at the bench, while Evelyn showed her how she organized designs and fabric scraps. Rachel sipped her coffee, then leaned in with a grin. "Okay, Aunt Evelyn. It's time." "For what?" "To open your Etsy shop." Evelyn hesitated. "I don't know if anyone wants—" "They do," Rachel said firmly. "Your needlework is art. These aren't kitschy quotes. They're stories. And if there's ever been a moment for women to reclaim their corners of the world, it's now. Let them buy a piece of it." Evelyn blinked, surprised by the emotion that rose in her chest. Not pride, not ambition, permission. So they sat together and built it, naming the shop Oak and Thread in homage to the estate Evelyn once nurtured, and the threads she now pulled tight with purpose. They uploaded photos of framed linens, each piece paired with a backstory and a title, Held Tongues, 4th chair on the left, Inheritance in Stitch. Orders didn't flood in, but the first one came by sundown, a woman in Vermont buying Woman in the Guest Room, a piece Evelyn had stitched with the outline of a house and no door. That night, Evelyn lit the lanterns strung along the ceiling beams and stepped back to look at the studio. The garage no longer echoed. It glowed. Her phone buzzed. "Rachel, you're about to get an email, just say yes." A second later, Evelyn's inbox dinged. Subject, Lifestyle Feature Inquiry, 2nd Acts, Series. From April Green, Senior Editor, Haven Hollow Living. "Hi Evelyn, I recently came across your Etsy shop and embroidery work, particularly Held Tongues. It stopped me cold. I'd love to feature you in our next 2nd Acts column about local women reinventing their lives with strength and beauty. Would you be open to an interview and a photo shoot in your workspace?" Evelyn smiled. Slowly, she scrolled to the bottom. "Let me know if you're interested." She answered in, "Yes, from overflow room to origin story. From garage to gallery." The next morning, April Green arrived with a leather notebook, a soft voice, and eyes that noticed everything. She didn't ask about the family tension, just the threads, the colors, the quiet strength stitched into every piece. When she spotted Held Tongues framed above the workbench, she paused, logically, then said simply, This tells a whole story." Evelyn offered her a cup of chamomile and nodded. "Yes, and I'm finally the one writing it." April had stayed longer than expected, asking about thread counts, lighting angles, Even Evelyn's feelings about legacy. Legacy. That word clung to her as she washed the good teacups and folded the linen napkins. She looked around the garage, her studio now. No longer a storage spillover or holiday overflow space. It smelled of lavender, pine, and warm fabric. The air hummed not with resentment, but quiet resolve. That evening, she reached into the top drawer of her desk and pulled out the final version of the trust package from Linda. The documents had arrived that morning, an envelope marked sign in presence of notary. Evelyn smoothed the pages out under the desk lamp and took a breath. Her signature would complete it. It wasn't just paperwork. It was a declaration, an estate restructured, will updated, financial powers revoked, property retitled, everything reset, not out of revenge, but restoration. She picked up her phone and called the UPS store 2 towns over. "Yes, I'd like to schedule a notary appointment. Tomorrow morning, earliest you have." The next day, the notary, a young man with kind eyes and efficient hands, passed her a black pen and watched silently as Evelyn signed each page. She didn't rush. She dotted every I with care, signed with the same name she'd once written on library slips, medical forms, birthday checks. When she finished, he slid the documents into a manila envelope embossed with a gold sticker. "All set, Ms. Carter," he said. She nodded. "Thank you. It's a good day." When she returned to the estate, the guesthouse lights blinked softly in the late afternoon haze. Her inbox held 3 Etsy orders, a follow-up email from April confirming the blog feature, and, strangely, an invitation. From Tessa. "Stop by the porch when you're back. I have something for you." Evelyn stared at the message for a long moment. Then she slipped the notarized documents into her safe, locked it, and walked up the hill one last time. Tessa was waiting on the front steps with a pink bakery box in her lap and an awkward smile pasted across her face. "Hi, Evelyn," she said brightly, as though the past month had been a scheduling mix-up. "Thought you might like a peace offering." Evelyn raised an eyebrow. Tessa opened the box to reveal a dozen cupcakes, lavender and lemon, piped perfectly. "Your favorite," I remembered. "How thoughtful." Tessa shifted in her seat. "Look, I know things got intense. I think we both said things we didn't mean." "I didn't," Evelyn said, calm as ever. Tessa's smile flickered. "I just think there's been a misunderstanding. This was never about excluding you. You're such a big personality. It's easy to feel like you're, well, everywhere. You've always been a little extra." Evelyn looked down at the frosting. "And yet, you offered me cake." Tessa chuckled uncomfortably. "I just thought maybe we could turn a page." Evelyn met her eyes. Clear, steady. "The page has already turned." There was no malice in her tone. Just fact. "I finalized the trust this morning," Evelyn said, her voice like water on glass. "Updated the will, retitled everything. My decisions are filed, witnessed, and notarized. There is no page to flip back to." Tessa blinked, caught between disbelief and a retort that never formed. "I brought cupcakes," she said softly, as if that counted for something. Evelyn stepped back, gently but firmly. "You brought cupcakes to a boundary conversation." Tessa stood now, arms folding, eyes darting. "You didn't have to make it all legal." "I didn't want to," Evelyn said, "but you made it performative. I made it permanent." Tessa's breath caught. Evelyn turned to leave but paused at the top of the steps. Over her shoulder, she added one last thing, quiet but sharp enough to cut through the frosted air. "This isn't personal. This is overdue." Next day, the smell of buttercream and ego drifted up the hill before Evelyn even opened the blinds. From the studio window, she could see balloons, rose gold and cream, bobbing against the wrought iron railing of the back patio. A long table had been set out beneath the pergola, covered in white linen and topped with stacked gift boxes. A folded sign leaned at the head of the table, partially obscured by hydrangeas, but she could still read the hand-lettered script. "Tessa turns 35. A champagne moment." Evelyn stared at it for a beat longer than necessary. Then she turned, walked to her desk, and picked up the envelope already sealed and stamped. She had drafted it the night before, simple, clear, and final. No anger, just enforcement. She slid it into her tote bag beside her embroidery kit and the latest Etsy order waiting for drop-off. There would be no confrontation, just facts and timing. At precisely 9:15 a.m., Evelyn walked up the hill. With her usual calm gait and left the letter in the mailbox at the front door of the main house. She didn't knock. She didn't linger. Inside the envelope, to Nathan and Tessa Carter. Subject, property use restriction enforcement, effective immediately, as of the date of final trust execution and title transfer, recorded and notarized. No events, celebrations, or gatherings may be held on the Oakwood property by previous residents, tenants, or family members pending relocation. This includes, but is not limited to, private parties, catered receptions, and outdoor functions involving uninvited guests. Any use in violation will result in immediate legal action. She returned to the guest house, brewed a fresh pot of coffee, and resumed her morning, embroidering a linen banner with the words, "Boundaries are an act of grace." By noon, voices carried through the trees. "Wait, she's serious?" someone barked. "We already paid the caterer," another said. From her window, Evelyn watched Nathan pacing the yard, phone to ear, hands flying. Tessa stood on the patio, arms folded, eyes burning toward the guest house like heat rays. Music had started, then abruptly stopped. A man in a white shirt rolled up the speaker cables and loaded them into a van without protest. The wind lifted one of the balloons. 3 escaped, tangled briefly in the oak branches, then floated free. By 3 o'clock, the tablecloth had been removed. The cake was taken back inside, its pale pink lettering barely visible from afar. No guests arrived. At 5:12 p.m., Evelyn's phone buzzed. "Rachel, you're trending on the neighborhood thread. Want to see it or save your peace?" Evelyn typed back, "Show me." Seconds later, a screenshot appeared. Tessa MD. Imagine being sabotaged by your own family. 1 day before your birthday, 1 day before your move. 1 cold letter, no warning, no heart. Some people confuse control with strength. I call it sad. Beneath it, a flood of likes, reactions, sympathy from those who hadn't read the property code or lived through the erasure. Evelyn read every word. She didn't reply. Instead, she opened her Etsy dashboard and uploaded her newest design, a minimalist hoop embroidered in soft gold thread on navy linen. The caption read, "Champagne isn't the only thing that pops when pressure builds. Boundaries can too." 3 orders came in within the hour. Just before dusk, Evelyn walked out onto her deck, glass of Prosecco in hand. Not to gloat, not to spy, to breathe. Tessa's patio sat silent now. A lone folding chair remained, its white paint chipped at the edge, casting a long shadow in the fading sun. Nathan came out briefly, glanced in her direction, then quickly turned away. Evelyn didn't wave. She didn't smile. She took a sip from her glass and watched the last of the helium balloons float skyward, silent, untethered, and late. They began packing that same night, quietly, furiously. After the birthday celebration crumbled under Evelyn's formal notice, Nathan moved slower, dazed, folding suits and unplugging chargers with mechanical focus. By morning, the hallway was bare, the guest room stripped of linens, and the scent of Tessa's signature diffuser had already begun to fade. They didn't say goodbye. They simply left, keys in an envelope taped to the front door like a resignation letter Evelyn never asked for. The morning after they left, Evelyn stood at the threshold of the main house, not as a guest, not as a helper, but as the owner. She didn't knock. She used her key. The locks had been changed a week ago, but this was the first time she entered without a buffer of conflict or logistics. Just intent. The air was still, holding the scent of something faded. Vanilla, maybe, or the last traces of that cloying diffuser Tessa favored. In the front hallway, the abstract canvas still hung where Evelyn's wedding portrait used to be. She stepped in front of it, studying the brush strokes like a stranger examining someone else's scars. Then, without hesitation, she took it down. In its place, she hung a large, black and white photo of her and Nathan, he couldn't be older than 5, holding hands in front of the old oak tree out back. Her husband had taken it on a Sunday afternoon, back when laughter filled this house without caution. She stepped back and looked at it. Now it felt like a home again. Not curated, not branded, lived in, Earned. By noon, the guest house had been cleared. Rachel's boxes arrived first, labeled in neat cursive: books, jackets, thrift finds too cool for Tessa. Evelyn helped her carry them inside, laughing as they maneuvered a vintage armchair through the narrow doorway. "Feels good in here," Rachel said, glancing around. "Peaceful, like it can breathe again." "You're not just a tenant," Evelyn replied. "You're a restoration." Evelyn handed her the spare key without ceremony, just a smile and a quiet, "It's yours now." No lease, no conditions. Rachel smiled, then handed her a small envelope. "Found this in one of your books while I was unpacking." It was a faded letter Evelyn had written to herself years ago, never sent, titled, "When You Forget What You Gave Up." She didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she returned to the main house and began her quiet renovation, not knocking down walls or changing floors, just replacing presents. She moved her sewing machine into the sunroom, dusted off the built-in shelves and refilled them with real books, not color-coded spines. The dining table, once a seasonal centerpiece of metallic pumpkins and trend-following florals, now bore a simple white bowl of lemons and rosemary sprigs from her old garden. The house exhaled with her, slowly, like it had waited for permission. Later that week, a delivery van arrived. Not for Tessa, for Evelyn. Inside were items from her past, ones Nathan had quietly stored after her original move into the guest house. She found the porcelain angel her mother had gifted her before her wedding, the handmade patchwork throw from her first year teaching, even her old recipe cards, still stained with ink and cinnamon oil. She placed them where they belonged, on mantels, in drawers, near the kitchen sink. By the following Sunday, everything was in place. She poured herself a cup of tea and stood barefoot in the newly restored entryway. She'd replaced the rug, rehung family photos, and brought back her brass umbrella stand. Outside, the sun broke through the trees, softening the edges of everything. Then came the mailbox flag, upright and red. Evelyn walked down the drive and opened it. Amid catalogs and bills sat a small cream-colored card, addressed in a looping script she didn't recognize. Inside it read, "Evelyn, we saw the photos in Haven Hollow Living. Beautiful doesn't even cover it. We always knew it was yours. The Garcias, number 47. She stood there on the gravel path, thumbing the edge of the card. Her eyes didn't water, but her breath did catch, for just a second. Because always is a word people rarely mean. But this time, she believed them. She turned the card over. On the back was a hand-drawn heart with 2 initials in the corner. She looked back toward the main house, warm lights now glowing from inside. Her house. And just then, the wind shifted again, lifting the scent of rosemary and wood polish through the air. Next morning, the scent of cinnamon and orange zest drifted through the main house, warm and slow, curling around the banister like something sacred returning home. Evelyn stood barefoot in the kitchen, placing rosemary scones on a white ceramic tray, the kind she once only used for holidays. Sunlight spilled through the windows, hitting the crystal flutes chilling beside the peach preserves and butter ramekins. It was Sunday. The kind she used to host when her son was little, before brunch became something catered, posed, and performed. This one wasn't for family. It was for truth. The table in the breakfast nook was set for 6, Rachel, Serena, her neighbor Mrs. Whitaker, and 2 friends from her library board who never asked personal questions, but always brought sharp wit and better gossip. There was no theme, no place cards, just cloth napkins pressed by hand, fresh coffee, and Evelyn's vintage silver warming dish holding scrambled eggs seasoned with her late husband's recipe card. The house, once stripped of her, now smelled like her again. Citrus polish, linen starch, and something intangible. Presents. Rachel arrived first, arms full of tulips. "Tell me we're drinking before noon." Evelyn grinned. "Darling, it's 10 minutes to." The others followed shortly after, trailing laughter and spring jackets. No one commented on the freshly rehung photos in the hallway, but Evelyn noticed how their eyes lingered on them, especially the one of her in a blue linen dress holding Nathan on her hip in front of the first swing set. No more abstract canvas, just roots. They settled around the table as Evelyn popped the champagne with a satisfying crack. A small splash fizzed over her fingers, cold and golden. She didn't wipe it away right away. She let it run just a little down her palm. She raised her glass, waited for the quiet. "I used to think sacrifice was the highest form of love," she said, voice steady but full. "But I've learned it only counts if it's respected. And boundaries," she paused, meeting each gaze, "are the real gifts we give to women we love, including ourselves." A soft murmur of agreement. Glasses clinked gently like wind chimes in a controlled breeze. Rachel leaned in. "You really did it, didn't you?" Evelyn smiled, but there was weight behind it. "I thought I was building a legacy, but I had to rebuild a boundary first." Across the table, Serena raised her glass. "To legacy on your terms. To living in your own name," added Mrs. Whitaker, her hand slightly trembling as she lifted her glass. "To hard lines," Rachel said, "drawn in gold thread." They drank. The champagne was sharp, cold, alive on the tongue, not cheap, not handed down from a tray like consolation. Evelyn stood again, lifting the linen from a second tray and revealing miniature deviled eggs topped with dill. "These were my mother's. I haven't made them since before." Serena touched her hand. "Then they're exactly right." They ate. They laughed. Someone put on a playlist that made its way through Nina Simone and Carole King, and Evelyn didn't stop it when the tempo slowed. She let it fill the house. A real home has rhythm, not curated silence. Later, as the women moved toward the sunroom, Rachel lingered behind, gathering glasses. "You okay?" she asked. Evelyn nodded. "More than okay." Rachel looked toward the window. "They haven't posted again." "No," Evelyn said, calmly sliding a lemon tart onto a saucer. "And they won't. Entitlement is loud, but accountability is quieter." As the guests left, hugs lingered at the door. Evelyn stood in the entryway, the same one she'd once tiptoed through like a tenant in heels too quiet to disturb. Now she stood firm, owner, matriarch, storyteller. She picked up her own flute, untouched until now, and walked out onto the porch. The breeze was warm, scented with new blooms, and something cleaner than forgiveness: clarity. She raised her glass toward the oak tree, still rooted where it had always been. "They gave me juice in the garage," she said to no one with a soft, steady grin. "I gave them the door, quietly."